A fertility doctor secretly fathered dozens of children, and in many states, that wasn't even clearly a crime. Now, one state has changed that, and it's raising a much bigger question. How much does biological identity actually matter? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Finding Freedom right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast network. I'm going to introduce my guest in a moment. We got a really important topic that we haven't talked about on this show before, so brand new. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys about my favorite coffee, the coffee that I start every morning with, and that, of course, is Fox and Sons Coffee, owned by a friend and entrepreneur, Stephen Fox, fellow Liberty lover. You can support Fox and Sons, and you can also support yourself with some by getting caffeinated by going to foxandsons.com. That's FOXNSONS.com. You can get 15% off an order of $40 or more by using promo code John, JOHN, at checkout. So go and get some coffee today. All right, my guest today is Josh Wood. He is the executive director of Them Before Us, who has been closely involved in passing a new fertility fraud law in South Dakota. So today we're diving into why this issue has struck such a nerve, what the law actually does, and how it could reshape the national conversation around parentage, reproductive technology, and children's rights. Josh, great to have you on Finding Freedom.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is a topic, like I said at the top, I haven't talked about this on the show. I know the Netflix documentary, which I think we're going to get into, where the fertility doctor, without the parents' knowledge, fathered a bunch of children by using his own sperm. That was a crazy documentary. But before we get to talking about that and getting into the meat of today's topic, maybe you could kind of introduce yourself more to my audience so they get to know you a little bit better.
My name's Josh Wood. I'm the executive director of Them Before Us. We're a global nonprofit that's fighting to defend a child's right to be raised by their mother and father. We believe that children have a right to their mom and dad, and that obviously society does better when we protect that right, which is why this story is so troubling.
Yeah, and when you say it like that, I mean it's kind of matter of fact. A child's right to be raised by his mother and father. I mean that sounds pretty non-controversial, right? I mean when
we hope so, but that's not the way culture is today. I mean we just went through a massive, felt like a decade of debating whether we could assign sex at birth. Yeah. Whether doctors could just say, well, people don't realize we're fighting that right now with deciding, can you assign a parent at birth? Do you just get to pick who belongs to who? And again, our organization would say absolutely not.
Yeah, so let's dig into kind of how this is being fought on the legal battlefield. So I did reference that Netflix documentary. The doctor's name, Donald Cline, right? And can you kind of talk through about what happened there for people who aren't familiar with that case?
Well, just to not insult any of your listeners' intelligence, but IVF, it means being made in glass. It's when you conceive a child, you combine sperm and egg in glass. Obviously, for millennia, right, this happened in a mother's womb, not in a laboratory. And so when it got moved to a lab, you as a mother and father were not there to see it happen. And so it introduced the opportunity for bad actors to potentially do things like what Dr. Donald Cline did, which was, hey, I'm actually going to ignore the sample that the father sent me, and I'm going to swap in my own sperm to father children. And he got away with this. There's, I think, over 90 children now that they've confirmed were fathered by Dr. Donald Cline. And what really made everyone mad was, in Indiana, where this had originally happened, they didn't have any mechanism to criminalize the procedure, to put him in jail forever. I think he ended up paying a $500 fine. And that
Wow.
kind of, was this firestorm now to say, we need to, rectify this.
Crazy. I mean, to think that, oh, there's no law for, infringing upon a child's right. I mean, it's absolute madness.
Well, it tells you a lot about what the industry is oriented toward. It's oriented towards no regulation, complete operation in the dark. I mean, within the IVF process, a lot of things go on with no oversight. We don't know, for example, the Boozer twins are on everybody's NCAA bracket this weekend. Well, they were a part of a process even however many years ago where their mother and father got 34 eggs and tried to fertilize all of them to try to find two genetic matches to do a what was a harvesting of cord blood to save their brother from sickle cell anemia to completely heal him. And we have no idea who they discarded in that process, where the other fertilized embryos were. Are they still frozen? Are you allowed to create a child to harvest their cord blood? I mean, this industry has operated in this country for, decades with no oversight. So something like this happens with Donald Cline and it makes people ask deeper questions like, how is there no check on a doctor being able to do this?
Mhm.
We not developed a regulatory infrastructure to ensure a child doesn't go through this?
Yeah, so that brings us to South Dakota and this law. So what is this new law, and how does it protect the rights of children?
Well, what's fascinating is it passed unanimously. I mean, what in today's world passes unanimously? Anything.
Normally things that do are bad. So something good passing unanimously is a good thing. Yeah.
That's true. Essentially, it established a legal principle that a child's biological parents are not interchangeable. It recognized that a child's biological identity is not a trivial detail, but it's a
Mhm.
defining part of who they are. And to mess with that is a felony, which again, we applaud that they took that step.
Yeah, and like, is this an instance where where you think it's possible where a law like this, where we can take it to other states and kind of like carbon copy, get it passed there as well?
Oh yeah, you're seeing. So this, to be clear, this is only the 15th state to do this. I mean, we have 35 sitting out there where a doctor could do this tomorrow and really
Hmm.
face almost no accountability in the process. And that this, again, it gets to the unregulated nature of the industry, that adults who occupy this don't want to have any restrictions on what they're doing. And so it is our job to step up. And we've seen in some other ways, Colorado, for example, said, hey, you're no longer allowed to donate anonymously. Like, even that, if you have a sperm donor and that was the father of your child, the child has a right to know who their
Yeah.
father was. And again, in Colorado, that's a very blue state. And again, that passed. So I do think you're seeing people wake up to, wait a second, who a child's parent is really matters. And we need to protect that.
Yeah, and I mean, it matters no matter what, but, even today, I guess, it doesn't matter more. It's just like, kinda like different insight into it. So we have all this new science and technology where we can you can look into genes, and you can, know if your parents have a certain, genetic trait, then you could be predisposed to the same, cancer or whatever. And it's crazy to me that I guess I never really thought about it before, that it's crazy to me that it was ever allowed for sperm donation to be anonymous, to not know who that individual is, to not have a history on that.
Well, I mean, you get some crazy, this is the same thing when we orient the policy around adults. So there was fear that if we make people say whose sperm this is, that less people will donate, and we won't have the selection we need. We won't have the Ivy League graduate, the polo player, you
Mm.
go down the list. And so the adults instituted anonymity to protect the supply. They weren't thinking about the child. That's the problem with all of these things. Why not have incredible regulation in this industry to ensure that absolutely nothing like this that happened, with Donald Cline could ever happen? Why? Well, when it hurts adults, when the industry might get a bad reputation, that's when you see people stepping in to try to make sure, well, we don't really need laws protecting that. Well, truth be told, there's over 50 documented cases or reported cases of this type of swap happening in our country. And it makes you think, if this is passing unanimously, why hasn't it already happened? What's is it just an awareness issue, or is there something more nefarious happening here?
I always ask who's making money off of it, right? It's all you follow the trail to who's making money. That's normally why things are happening the way they're happening.
Well,
Um,
take California for example. They have a thriving industry of gamete sales, so the purchase of egg and sperm. And you had just the other day, it was a couple months ago, that a Chinese billionaire was caught using surrogates across the state to father up to 50 different children. And again, where is he?
what?
Yeah, all at the same time. And the judge only even came to our awareness because a judge was signing parentage orders. So these, again, an order, right? You actually get to assign the child to you before the child is born. And they noticed it was the same. You kind of imagine it's not too often that someone is doing 8 or 10 of these, much less 50 of these, right?
Mhm.
And so the judge said, wait a second, what's going on here? Should CPS be involved? Should we investigate? Because there's no, again, back to the oversight. They don't go home when you create a child through surrogacy. They don't go home and check to make sure the child is with a loving, you know, set of parents. They don't check to make sure the child's not even a child predator. There's no backstop here. And
Mhm.
so someone found out, well, why has that not been closed? Again, because adults are benefiting from the lack of regulation.
Yeah, it's selfishness, right? I mean, when adults are building it for themselves, they're yeah, like you said earlier, they're not looking out for the child. They're not thinking that far ahead. It's such short term thinking. And I'm curious with them before us, which you talked about prioritizing child before adult, which like kind of talked about earlier, seems like common sense when you put it that way, but common sense is not that common these days. So how is them versus us working to educate, intervene, pass legislation, all the above?
Well, the first step is articulating that reality that our laws should be oriented toward the flourishing of children and their future. They shouldn't be oriented to make life easier for adults at the sacrifice of the children. Right?
Hmm.
This whole assignment, you can go everything from divorce, which is one of our issues, the rampant no fault divorce laws that have spread through our country that make it almost impossible to assign fault. That if one spouse cheated, if one spouse was the bad actor, we think when it comes time to reconcile, again, they push through a divorce. There should be a conversation about who is at fault. We should not be going through these decisions with no accountability. That
Hmm.
punishes this often the spouse who's trying to do the right thing, who's being the adult in the situation. That's a fundamental shift of what serves adults would be being able to get out of the contract at any time for any reason with no accountability. Well, what serves kids would be the preservation of the relationship and the strengthening of the union that gives them that stability. So we take this ethic and go everywhere, whether it's adoption, foster care, marriage, divorce, or reproductive technologies, and just ask the simple question, who's being asked to sacrifice here? Is it the adult
Hmm.
or the kid?
Yeah. It's interesting with this. Um, when you look at surrogacy, for example, and like what I keep coming back to, I'm a Christian, and we're talking about ethics here, right? And at the end of the day, like not everyone is a Christian. Not everyone has the same ethics. I myself, I believe that, life starts at conception. So when that egg is fertilized, that's a life. Um, so with that, with IVF, we have warehouses full of fertilized eggs, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it seems like you talked about earlier, this has gone along for so long with really no one really paying attention to it. It was serving the adults who wanted to have a child, and I can totally relate to the pain that couples go through, not being able to have children. My wife and I, we were lucky enough to be able to have, we have a 10-year-old daughter now, but we were not able to have a second child. And I mean, that's something we wanted. We never went down the IVF road. So I mean, I can relate a little bit to that pain they go through, but it just seems like we've opened up this can of worms that it's open now. It's like what the heck? What happens next? Like, well, what do we do with all these warehouses full of fertilized eggs?
Well, what people don't realize is that you did have over a period of years a landscape where states were doing whatever they wanted. I mean, California was the one that pioneered this idea of assigning children to parents, the parents assigned at birth idea.
Mhm.
But it was not, some people think this is a fight against LGBTQ families. It wasn't originally. It was a straight couple using surrogates who wanted to make sure that the surrogate wasn't counted as the mom, that the mom, the intended parent, the one who had commissioned or purchased the child, wanted to make sure they were the parent. And so they pushed back against the biological claim to make sure that the adult got the kid. Now, what happened that fundamentally changed all this was
Mhm.
the 2015 decision of Obergefell, the gay marriage decision. What that said was that same sex couples have to have access to everything, all the benefits that a straight couple has. Well, one of those things was the ability to be a parent. And how states assign parentage was traditionally you and your wife go to the hospital, you have a baby, you're the husband, boom, you
Mhm.
are considered to be the parent. You don't have to go through a process, you don't have extra paperwork, you don't have to adopt. Well, the Supreme Court says you have to afford the same sex couple the same opportunity. That if their wife goes, then the other woman in the relationship who's not biologically related to the kid, you have to give them parentage too. So, what biology made unequal, now the state had to artificially
Mm.
create. And now you can't push back. Back in the day, Alabama or Florida or Georgia could say, we don't do that here. A parent is of the child is a mother or a father. You can go all the way to your DNA, right? And you
Mhm.
can test. I could find out who my mom and dad are if you've never even met me from a blood test. They said, we don't assign now. You're not allowed to prioritize biology because biology is discriminatory. Same sex couples don't have access to biology the same way you and your wife do.
Biology is discriminatory. That's where we are now in 2026. It's a
That's the new regime. And so
yeah.
they've created this whole legal landscape where now you have to assign a child to the two parents who have paid for it, who have purchased the egg, who've purchased the sperm, who've purchased a surrogate. You have to assign them. Otherwise, you are denying them a benefit of marriage. So our organization, we say, well, that's wrong. A child
Mhm.
belongs to their mother and father. They have a right to their mother and father. And we believe they aren't just a state constructed family, like an asset to be assigned to the buyer. They're a person to be protected.
Yeah, it's just so legalistic the way that it has been set up. So inhumane, really. When it's interesting when you think about it, because the people on the other side of it, who are pushing for these equal marriage rights for the for LGBTQ community, they're coming from the side of trying to make it more humane from their perspective, right? But it ends up doing the opposite. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but it is interesting when you look at it that way.
Well, of course, right? Because making it more humane. We have this tendency when two people are shown, wouldn't these two women make great moms? Wouldn't they love their kids? Can't we find a way to find them a kid? That's that mindset that comes, and we
Mhm.
feel empathy for the adults. Our organization says take a step back and let's center the proper victim here. Anytime you see a family with two moms, you are missing a father. Again, it's shocking to me that even Barack Obama's whole presidential life was about promoting fatherhood. Well, why does fatherhood only matter when we're talking about straight couples? Why does the missing father
Mhm.
not matter when we talk about two women? Again,
Mhm.
this isn't anti anybody. It's saying that kid came from two people, and every study on the book shows that if you separate them from one of them on purpose, intentionally, potentially financed to make it happen, that's going to have an effect on the kid. And again, this data is undeniable. It does.
Have there been any lawsuits or any sort of legal precedents where a kid grows up and, um, I guess either has to to bring a lawsuit to find out who their actual father is, or has that happened?
Man, I that's a great question. I am sure you see this sometimes with adoptees suing to have their records open.
Mhm.
What's happening is there was this movement for a long, long time that we need to protect the people who would be putting their child up for adoption, or in the case of donation, we need to protect the identity of these donors. And again, even though we'd have cases with sperm donation where a guy would visit 3 or 4 clinics in a very small area and would have 400 children in a very small geographic area.
Mm.
And that's a massive public health problem,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so we're shifting now. Thank God. We're shifting to be more oriented towards the rights of the child, to say, I think it actually matters. They call it genealogical bewilderment, that when a child doesn't know where they come from, it will mess with them. It will harm them. It's a challenge for them. We have quotes from, there's a big study called "My Daddy's Name is Donor," and it's essentially cases of all of these children conceived through sperm donation, and almost to a person, they may even say, "My family's fine. I'm good with the arrangement." But when you ask them, "Did it affect you? Did it to learn?" They say, "Well, yeah, absolutely. I began to look around and say, who any of these people could be my dad. I began to
Mm.
look at my nose differently. I'd look in the mirror and say, I see someone now that I don't recognize." I
Mm.
mean, this is real harm being foisted upon kids. And you asked the question earlier, and it was the perfect one. Who's benefiting from this?
Yeah.
Why would we continue this regime if it's hurting kids?
That is a very important thing to point out. I mean, you have a kid who's looking in the mirror and is saying, "There's a part of me I don't know who that is. Like, who is that person? What's their history? Where did they come from?" And yeah, to have no idea. I mean, so many people in this country talk about the importance of mental health, and we need more funding for mental health. We need it, and that's all great. I mean, mental health is important, but it's like, yeah, just not that mental health. Let's not talk about that. Let's focus on the mental health of the two mothers who are able to have a child, and let's not worry about the mental health and the
Yeah.
future impacts on that child.
Again,
It's nuts.
it goes back to the fatherhood initiatives. It's like, why does every study in history show that not having a father present is horrendous, that it's awful, that it's basically the baseline for all ills, all the school shooters, all the runaways, all the we have all this terrible data, but then the minute we flip to evaluate two men or two women raising a child, being intentionally severed. That's like an important distinction here. The vast majority of same sex couples prefer biological parentage. There's this myth that, oh, the same sex couples, they always adopt. It's all about adoption. They're not creating children.
Mhm.
When asked, there was a Williams study that when asked, the majority preferred to create a child because biology was important to them. Again, it's important enough for them to get 50% of their biology, so they have a connection with the kid. It's not important enough to preserve it for the child. It's this hypocrisy, right?
Mm.
But the minute we go to study these things, it's like it vanishes. mysteriously. Like all these studies that ask the parents, "Is your kid doing great?" "Oh, it's doing great." "Awesome. Okay, great study." They don't actually report the outcomes of the child. And it's striking because anytime you talk about mother or father loss in the context of straight couples, it's a massive negative. You flip the switch and it's no difference,
Yeah.
which we all know to be false.
So from a like a policy standpoint, we have this law that passed recently, and I think you said other states have a similar law in place. But what else can be done from a policy standpoint?
Well, we have to, you want to start talking about progression. We have to regulate the industry. I don't even care if you're a stark proponent of IVF, the technology that made this possible. Even if you're a massive proponent, you have to be in favor of reforms. The fact that we have an estimated 7 to 10 million frozen embryos on ice around the world should
That's nuts.
should
Yeah.
scare everyone. These are children on day 3 or 5 of life. And for those that aren't familiar, pre 2005, the freezing process, which happens when they pull eggs from the prospective mother and they fertilize them, they have to get as many as possible because you grade them then. You're trying to find, like, almost like a high school report card. You're trying to grade to see which one has the statistically best chance, which has grown the best by day 5. Then they only implant that one. It's almost like a
Mm.
Vegas game. I've got 3 high quality, and then the other 27 or 26, the Boozer family from earlier in the conversation is a good example. They take and they'll have dozens potentially that didn't make the grade. Well, where do those go? Into cold storage. Well, thank goodness we've actually improved cold storage technology, because pre 2005, it was as high as 40 or 50% would die in the thaw after freezing. So,
I'm just curious. Sorry to interrupt, but who's paying for all that cold storage? Do you have any idea? Like,
oh yeah. I saw a thread the other day with a bunch of parents talking about the frozen embryos they had, and they were debating on, what do you do with yours? What do you do with yours? Do you ever think about the children you have locked up in the freezer? And one of them said, "Yeah, I do think about it. Every time I have to pay that huge bill every month, it's the parents."
oh, really? Okay.
Now, they estimate in the US 25 or 30% have stopped paying the bill. And these fertility companies don't know what to do. If I destroy these children and there was some miscommunication, am I suddenly at fault? Am I going to get sued for
Hmm.
property loss? I mean, it's this big, issue. But again, sit with the fact that there were pre 2005, which there's millions of children that are frozen pre 2005. 50%, 40% will die in the thaw. I mean, you're talking about, I don't know, a million, 2 million children that will die trying to be thawed. And even today, they've gotten so much better at the technology. You're still going to deal with the 2 to 5% risk of death. That's about an open heart surgery on an infant. That's a massive risk. So when you talk about what policies can we implement, well, man, apart from saying this is a terrible idea and we shouldn't be doing it at all, we could
Mhm.
start with, don't create more embryos than you're going to use. Don't grade them. Don't screen out all the ones that you think are undesirable because they have a potential for a disease. Don't screen out the boys because you want a girl. I mean, you can go down the list. There's some very common sense things that are all legal right now.
Do you think that the ones you listed there, do you think there'd be bipartisan support for that?
If we went to an everyday person, again, most people have no clue what IVF is. But if I told them, should we be intentionally checking to see every single kid to see if they have Down syndromes and eliminate them? Is that morally good? They'd say, no, absolutely not. If I
I would hope you're right, but what kinda makes me concerned that you might not be, in Iceland, didn't they pass a law that
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
they pretty much eliminate anyone with Down syndrome?
Yeah, I think not something like 99% of children born in Iceland
Wow.
or diagnosed in Iceland, because their pre-genetic testing is so rampant there that they've almost completely wiped out any Down syndrome individuals in Iceland. So you know what, you might be right. But you get down to the list, they're even now today through something called polygenic testing, they're doing rudimentary IQ tests on embryos. Which ones show
What?
Yes, which ones show a propensity for high intelligence? And it gives you about a 6 to 10% chance that you're right. They're trying to diagnose schizophrenia, even risk-taking abilities, hair color. I mean, eugenics is here, and they are doing it. It's called, you can go online. I think it's called Have Your Best Baby or pickyourbaby.com. That allow this massive amount of screening to try to pick your best child. These are not people struggling with infertility.
Yeah.
These are optimizers who want to have the best kid, even if they can have a child normally. This is appealing to a very select market.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, wow, this sounds unbelievable, but I did have a conversation with someone, I guess about 8 months ago at a football tailgate, who had been recently married, and both him and his wife were older, and they were gonna do IVF, and he was saying that exact same thing. They were gonna go through and pick the sex and pick the, all the different traits that they could, and it totally blew my mind, and probably not the smartest thing to do, but I was trying to convince him not to do it, which I mean, I had to. It just
Yeah.
kinda came out of me. But whatever, if the guy hates me now, then it is what it is.
But here's the thing that gets missed in this conversation. These clinics will advertise a success rate, and so you got to pay attention. The success rate is how often their transfers are leading to a child being born. Okay, so
Mhm.
they figure with a couple they might get 3 or 4 transfers. That means taking an embryo, putting it into the woman from the lab. Okay, well, they're trying to advertise, look how effective we are. 40% of the time or 50% of the time it's effective. What they're not disclosing and what they're not required to disclose, what we could put a law in place tomorrow to disclose, is how many embryos did you create and freeze or discard or donate to research to make possible your success rate? Because the success rate does not take into account how many were lost during the thaw. How many
Mhm.
were lost? How many because they were a girl when they should have been a boy? How many had Down syndrome? How many hypothetically were stupid, didn't have a good IQ? Like that is an insanely misleading statistic. Now, what happens if you do these kind of regulations and take it all the way back to say, well, why aren't they just taking one egg and one sperm and putting them together and then putting that in the woman? Well, when you lose the ability to play this game, to get your A plus embryos, the truth is their success rates, they fall dramatically. To now it's not even advantageous to pay all that money to do IVF, because natural solutions where you go to a doctor and they actually look at you and say, let's examine why you or your partner aren't able to conceive. Let's
Mhm.
look at your sperm health. Let's look at your cycle. Let's track it. Do you have endometriosis? Is there something else going on? And that success rate of solving infertility through actually making you better is better than the success rate with IVF. So they don't want to be limited, because the limitation, the ability to create all of these embryos, is exactly what's behind the numbers that they sell to these families.
And that's the money behind all of it right there. I think you just nailed it. So, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but just speculating, looking forward 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, you mentioned earlier that we pretty much have eugenics now, a form of it. Do you think that we'll continue to go down that road in a bad way, or do you think that things will turn and we'll get some people with some ethics who can either do it from a policy standpoint, or I think it needs to be a policy standpoint, a cultural standpoint, a religious standpoint. There needs to be an awakening. But what do you kind of see in the future?
Well, so I'll tell you where I think we're going and what is the antidote. Where we're going, the again, to go back to the kids that'll be celebrated this March Madness, the Boozer family, they saw fit to heal their one son, to create as many embryos as possible to find a cure. And IVF facilitated this technology to find a savior sibling for this child. I think as we go, there's artificial wombs being tested right now, which would allow a baby to gestate outside of a mother. You add that in with sperm and egg sales, the ability now to not even have a woman involved in the process because it's happening in a bio bag, they call it. You are going down a very dark world where
Mhm.
children could potentially be buy the egg, sperm, put it in the bag, gestate them, and into a very dark, detached place where this child has no parents to look after them. They don't know who they came from, and they're being gestated, grown up completely away from a mother. For what purpose? To be mass produced and sold for their organs? I mean, that sounds like psychotic, but there already is in different parts of the world organ markets, not happening through children, but happening through people. What happens when you get the ability to mass produce children who have no attachment, who have no mother or father around to look out for them, to account for them? That's a very, very dark place. Now, what is the anti? And again, I don't want to get dystopic or sci-fi, but we have to be prepared that when we violate the very fundamental principle of a child belongs, has a right to one mother and one father, that down to their blood, their DNA, you can test and find out who those two people are. That bond is not purely sentimentality. That it's not this, well, I could be in the hospital with my wife and they could swap our kid with the kid across the hall and everything would be fine. No, it fundamentally matters who
Mhm.
my child is. And again, I'm a believer too. God made kids to look like us. Why did he do that? Why did they share our traits? There's something intrinsic about that they do belong to us. They are ours. That we
Mhm.
have a right to them, they have a right to us. Well, that principle protects this whole infrastructure. It protects, it guards against. It's not a complicated policy. It's saying that you can never violate that. You would end all of it, all at once with such a simple principle. But again, that would really limit adults who want children very badly, who feel they're owed children from being able to acquire them in whatever manner they want. The boy, the girl, the light skin, the dark skin, the athletic, the smart. They believe this child they're owed is a commodity that they can purchase and customize. And
Mhm.
so those adults, those industries are going to war against that fundamental principle.
Yeah, and when you were describing, during the first part of your answer there about, growing children for organs or body parts, I mean, a very, very dark place, and, I don't think it's out of line to say that would be slavery. I mean, they would just be creating children in a plastic bag or whatever. It's just a different kind of slavery, and hopefully people would see it that way, and it won't get anywhere close to that, but it really does worry me because there are, you know, real people out there who are totally in favor of, picking their genetic traits for their child, picking, the gender and these different things, like you talked about the IQ, and it's a slippery slope right into that.
Well,
Um,
because it's already happened. What we
mhm,
haven't gotten is a kid being grown to get a kidney or something like that, liver yet. But we have taken 30, 25 kids and said, who has the right blood tissue, blood type that we can, if we pick this one, when they grow up, we can take from them. I mean, there's that book, I think it's called My Sister's Keeper, where it it went through this thought experiment. We know we will do those other things as a society because we're allowing it right now for people
mm,
to select certain embryos that can benefit other existing persons, creating a person to be a medical part for someone else. That's already occurring today.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad I, came across your work and had you on the show here today, Josh. This is incredibly important, and I want to make sure that my audience knows where they can learn more about this, where they can follow you. where they can, find them before us and be able to support it.
Yeah, go to thembeforeus.com and join our mailing list. We also have a Substack. It's a publication that talks about these issues all the time. We send 2 articles out a week. That's at thembeforeus.substack.com. You'll find us on all the social media platforms at Them Before Us.
All right, Josh. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, guys, that is a wrap for today's show with Josh Wood. If you all are anything like me, I hope this was an eye opening episode for you. I want to encourage you to go check out the show notes page at lionsofliberty.com to see all of the links there. Share this episode with your friends, with your family, with people you care about. As Josh, talked about, this should be an issue that I think brings us together when we really get down to the basics of it. As human beings, I think that once we cut through all the political coverings and we get to the basic rights of a child, I think most people should be on the right side on this. But hopefully, you guys enjoyed this show. If you like this show, if you like everything we're doing at Lions of Liberty, please do consider supporting us on Patreon or Locals. You can find us there and get some nice perks, some nice benefits. Also, subscribing wherever you're watching or listening is a big help as well. That's all I got for this week. I'll be back again next week with another great show. But in the meantime, keep moving, and I'll see you next week.